Hi everyone, thanks for joining in. I'm excited to have Mercedes Mercer joining me. Hi Mercedes.
Hi, Jackie. Thanks for having me.
Just a little bit about Mercedes. Mercedes writes just one more page crime with twisting plots and relatable characters. When she's not writing, she works in the criminal justice system, providing her unique insight into the world of prisons, crime, and offenders. After a brush with death, Mercedes decided to throw herself into life. She lived overseas, became a black belt in karate, skydived, and volunteered with animals. She is currently writing her second novel to be published in 2023, and when she doesn't have her nose in her laptop and her mind in a story, she loves to read, travel, try new restaurants, and listen to podcasts. True crime, of course.
Of
She
course.
dreams of living on a big property with a menagerie of animals, but currently lives in Adelaide with her partner and just the one dog. I have to say that living on a big property with a menagerie of animals is probably one of my dreams as well. And her debut novel is White Noise. Just hopefully you can see my copy there. And I just wanted to mention before you start telling us about White Noise that I finished reading it a couple of days ago and totally loved it. It was a 5-star read for me. So
Oh,
yeah,
thank you
really,
so
really
much.
grabbed me. So thanks for
Thank you.
writing it. Do you,
Thank you so
do you want
much.
to start off by telling us a little bit about it?
Sure. So, White Noise is about Laura Fleming, and she's a psychologist in a fictional prison called Westmead Prison in New South Wales. And she inherits an inmate from a colleague who goes on to early maternity leave. And his name's Justin Jones, and he's charming and manipulative, and he's got everyone in the prison fooled into thinking he's this perfect inmate. Um, it's Laura's job to assess his suitability for early release to parole, something that Justin desperately wants. And she suspects that he's hiding something and may be too dangerous to be released early.
Mm.
So she has to race to find this evidence to support her suspicions before his parole hearing, which is coming up. And as she does so, she falls victim to these increasingly personal threats and attacks and these secrets and things that she's sort of hidden from her past start to come to light.
And one thing I've been dying to ask you is I live very close to those places, Westmead, and you mentioned Castle Hill and that. They're very,
Mm-hmm.
very close to where I am. What made you have that as your location? Because I notice you live in Adelaide.
I do live in Adelaide, so I
Mm,
still work for corrections. I currently work for corrections at the moment. So
mm,
to avoid that sort of conflict of interest, I guess I thought I'd set it in a interstate prison.
mm,
And I spent a lot of time in New South Wales, in Sydney, obviously before the pandemic, because I had a friend that lived up there. So it was sort of second nature to set it around there.
mm,
Spent a lot of time in Bondi, which is where Laura lives.
mm.
So that felt very familiar to me, and I felt like I could write it in a believable manner. Not living there currently.
Yeah.
But because I wrote it during the pandemic, I couldn't actually get up to Sydney to sort of, refresh
Mm.
refresh my memory and sort of walk around the places that she would be walking. So I did spend a lot of time on Google Maps and going down streets and
Yeah.
having a look at photos and things. So yeah.
Yeah. No, I have to say I enjoyed some places that I recognised and that being
Oh,
in the
that's
book.
good.
Yeah. Yeah. And what was the first idea you had for White Noise?
Well, I think I was sitting at work one day and I was talking to one of my friends who's actually a psychologist with the department.
Mm,
And I was just sort of listening to her talk, and it just sort of struck me like what a huge, massive responsibility it is to be the person that assesses whether, an inmate is suitable for
mm,
release to parole. And that sort of rests on one person's shoulders. And I just started to think like that is a huge and very important responsibility.
mm,
And I thought I really wanted to write a story that pitched a really clever, manipulative inmate against an equally clever psychologist, and sort of see how that, that power play, played out, and and explore that a little bit. So yeah, that was my first sort of inkling of the thought of what White Noise would be about.
Yeah. And when did the idea first come into your head? How long until it actually became the book?
Probably a couple of years. So in 2016, I did the Fiona McIntosh masterclass, and I came to that masterclass writing completely different. I was writing commercial women's fiction, but crime was always I loved crime. I've spent my whole life reading crime. I love true crime podcasts. It's watching true crime documentaries, watching crime shows. But I think for the longest time I was kind of, because I loved the genre so much, I was almost intimidated to write in it. I was reading all these amazing crime novels with all these twists and turns and red herrings and all these things that I hadn't seen coming, and I was just like, wow, I didn't believe in myself, I guess, enough that I could write crime. And so I went to Fiona McIntosh's masterclass with this commercial women's fiction, which I really loved, and I loved writing in that genre, and I love reading in that genre also. And Fiona sort of sat me down and she said, you've got such a unique background with your corrections background. Yeah. Why don't you write a crime novel? And I thought, yes, I would love to, but I'm just not sure I can pull it off. Anyway, so for a couple of years, I continued to write in commercial women's fiction. I branched out, did a bit of romance, which I loved as well. Sent quite a few manuscripts off to publishers, but unfortunately, was rejected sort of every time. And then the pandemic hit, and I don't know, there's just sort of something that changed in me, I guess, that I just sort of thought, why can't I write a crime novel? Like, give it a go. And I sat down, and I always knew that if I was going to write a crime novel, because of my background, I would set it in a prison. And I sort of had that inkling of that idea after that talk with my psychologist friend a few years beforehand. And so I sort of had those two things in the back of my mind. And I sort of sat down, and I'm a bit of a pantser. I don't particularly plot too much. I sort of knew the main points, but I didn't really know how I was going to move the story between those main points. So I just sort of sat down. I had the main points in my head, and it just, the words just, came out of me. It just sort of flowed out. And that's not to say writing the whole book was that easy, because it definitely wasn't. But as soon as I started writing and it started flowing, I thought, actually, I can do this. I can write a crime novel. And yeah, that's how it came about.
And I presume you were working full time in your other role when you were writing?
Yes, I was. Yes, I still work full time.
Did you have a set structure to make sure you had time to write, or what did you do?
I do. I have a very strict routine. That's sort of how I am. That's what works for me. Obviously, it doesn't work for all authors, but I need to sit down and at the same time each day write the same amount of words each day and not leave my chair until I'd got them done, because the second I gave myself a little bit of leeway and said, oh, that's all right, I'll just walk away not having done my word count, then I know myself, and that's when I sort of trail off, and I'll stop doing that word count every day. So I found that mornings are the best time for me. My brain just fires really well in the morning. From about 2 p.m. onwards, it's mush, and there's no point in trying to get my brain to do anything creative after that time. So to fit it in with work, I get up at 5 a.m. every morning, and I write 1,200 words a day, and I don't get out of my chair until I've done those 1,200 words. Yeah, which can be challenging when you've got to get off and get going to work. But I think that pressure is what helps me get those words done. If I wrote in the evening and I just had the whole evening ahead of me stretched out, I don't think I could get them down as easily as when I've got, you know, an hour and a half, 2 hours in the morning just to bang it out and get it done.
What have you ever found, like you're in a good groove and everything's flowing and then, oh no, you have to stop to go?
Yes, I've had to do that too. But again, like I don't let myself sort of go under the word count. I also try not to let myself go over the word count either. If I'm, you know, in the groove, I'll try and finish the sentence or the paragraph. But I quite like stopping in the middle of being in the groove, because I find the next morning I can get straight back into it and I'm straight in the middle of a scene. I can, you know, that sort of snowballs on and that momentum sort of carries into the next scene. So I don't try and, you know, purposely finish a chapter or a scene if you know, if I've done my work, if I haven't done my word count that day, I'll just get my word count done. And if it's in the middle of a, you know, paragraph, that's when I stop.
And what about writer's block? Do you ever sit there and not know what you're going to write?
Sometimes that does happen. But I find the things that help me are, it's always when my laptop isn't close to me that I'll get my ideas. It's just the way it always works for me, unfortunately. So I find my two best idea sort of generating places are when I'm walking my dog, and far away from my laptop, of course, or if I'm in the shower. And I just find that those two sort of activities, doing something else, being in a different environment, I find that, you know, my back of brain just starts ticking over, and something will just come to me, and then I'll be like, oh gosh, I've got to. So I normally have my phone with me, so I, you know, pull up the notes section on my phone and write down, you know, whatever plot point I've just solved, or you know what great bit of dialogue or idea I sort of had. Sometimes it's the middle of the night as well. I'll be lying there. I've woken up at 2 a.m. for some reason, can't get back to sleep. So of course I'm sitting there thinking about this plot point that I can't figure out, or this you know, clue, or this, you know, red herring that I just can't quite get to work. And then normally it'll be, you know, 2:30, 3 o'clock, and then it'll come to me. And then there's that battle of, will I remember this in the morning? Do I just think, oh, okay, great, now I can go to sleep? Or do I get up, write this down? And I've learnt that I always have to write it down, because I can think in the middle of the night that it's solid and I'll remember exactly what I thought of. Yeah, but never do. So. Yeah.
And what sort of research did you have to do for white noise?
So for the corrections, the prison side of things, thankfully I didn't have to do all that much. My background in that was pretty strong, so I didn't have to do too much on that front. But I did sit down and talk to my psychologist friend, because I don't have a background in psychology. So I did sit down and chat to her, just to make sure that, you know, I got everything right, and you know, the processes that they follow were, you know, I mean, they were fictionalized to a certain degree, but I wanted them to be based in reality. I also had to do, you know, quite a bit of research into, you know, drug addiction, childhood violence, domestic violence, coercive control, all of those sort of themes that come up in white noise.
And we've got quite a few people watching, so just wanted to mention to the people watching, if you do have any questions for Mercedes, please type them in comments and I can read them out. Wendy wonders if your story contains any pieces from any cases you've had experience in.
No, not really. I didn't do it based on any one person or situation, or even any one prison. I made sure to keep it fairly broad, and I sort of cherry picked, you know, interesting things that I've heard and, you know, remembered and been a part of over the years, and I'd sort of cherry pick something from one experience and then combine it with something from another experience, or, you know, a characteristic from, someone I know that I work with, or, that was in prison somewhere, and I'd sort of make sure that I combine that with a couple of other elements. So it wasn't based on any one person or, any one situation.
And Jill wonders if you reread what you wrote the previous day before starting to write the next day. That's an interesting
I don't
question.
actually. And there's been a couple of funny situations when I go back and edit it, and halfway through a paragraph, someone's name will change. It'll just be a completely different first name and surname. So you can tell that I haven't gone back and read it. And that's sometimes because it probably takes me between 4 and 6 months to write a first draft. So by the time I finish that first draft, I haven't read what I've written, in the first quarter, say, for, almost 6 months. So rereading it again is really looking at it with fresh eyes, and it gives me a really good basis to edit on. And once I've finished that first draft, I try and leave it. I try and put it away and do something else, start working on something else, or, dive into a couple of really good crime novels that I've been dying to read while I'm writing. So I try to, as much as I can, I try to not read within my genre when I'm writing, because I do get a bit worried that, something, I'm reading, it'll come through in my work by osmosis. So I try and read in a different genre while I'm writing, and then, once I've finished that first draft, I can sit down and pick up that big pile of crime novels that I've been desperately, wanting to read.
And talking about like reading and that, what do you like reading yourself? And is there something that you might have been reading lately that you'd like to recommend to us?
Yes, I love crime. I love psychological thrillers. I read a little bit of romance. I read a little bit of fantasy, commercial women's fiction, a little bit of everything really. But normally I will mostly read in the crime thriller, psychological thriller genre. Recently I read Lying Beside You by Michael Robotham.
Oh yes, yeah.
I love. Like he's just an automatic, as soon as a book comes out, bam, add to cart, read that one. He's just a master. But I also recently read Someone Else's Child by Kylie Orr.
Oh yes, yeah.
I've
got that on my pile to read. I haven't read, but I've heard good things about that one.
Really, really good. Lots of twists and turns, and I can't. It's sort of a book that you can't talk too much about because the main theme is a spoiler. So, but okay. It's a brilliant debut, and I really recommend it to anyone.
And Sharon, she wonders how much input you have in the cover and the title.
Well, not a whole lot, to be honest. So the title, when I submitted it, I called it The Hearing, which was a play on the parole hearing, the upcoming parole hearing, and my main character, Laura, suffers from tinnitus, which is a hearing affliction after an attack in her previous career. So I'd sort of played on those things with the title The Hearing, and then my wonderful publisher said, it's a great title, but I think we can make it, a little bit more exciting. And so she came up with White Noise, and we loved it immediately. We thought she sort of said, oh, how about we come up with some other titles as well? We can have a look through some others. But every time we just kept coming back to White Noise. And I think we knew from the minute it was suggested that was the title.
Yeah.
With the cover, my publisher asked me to do a mood board, which was really fun. So she sort of asked for, colours and themes and styles that I might want on the cover. I was pretty easygoing with the cover. I sort of wanted the reds and the oranges and those sort of emergency services colours because, as you know, Laura had a background as a paramedic before she moved to another type of, emergency services area. The only thing that I didn't really want on the cover, and my publisher agreed with me, was I didn't really want the the prison bars or the barbed wire, that kind of stuff on the cover, because even though it's set in a prison, I didn't want that sort of those sort of themes to come through, because it is, from the viewpoint of a psychologist working in a prison, rather than an inmate or
And Belinda asked a question that I was wondering as well. She wonders if your next book's going to continue as a series, or will it be a standalone?
My next book is a series, so it has the same cast of characters.
I was hoping you were going to say that.
Yeah, so I've been really enjoying. I'm just finishing up on the edits for that one now. I've been really enjoying writing that one, and at the moment, the story is around a really high notoriety inmate in Westmead who committed a pretty atrocious murder, and at the time of the crime, he never confessed where he'd left the body.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so he gets diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. Only has a few weeks left to live, and the authorities would like, the case closed. They'd like to give the victim's family some closure, and try and find out where this poor woman's body is, and so the prison brings on Laura to try and sit down, build his trust, have a chat to him, try and get him to disclose to her where this body is, and as she sits down and has these sessions with this inmate, she starts to realise that everything isn't quite what it seems.
Okay. No, sounds good, and I'm glad to hear that we'll be seeing Laura again.
Yes.
And could you tell us if there's anything that maybe readers have been getting back to, anything strange or weird or something you'd like to share with us that you might have had from feedback from from readers about your book?
I was kind of thinking that I might get some people, write to me or give me feedback that, that they've been in prison, or they've had a family member in prison, or, they've been involved in a crime in some way. Unfortunately, I haven't had that yet. But, I would love to hear that, and I'm still holding out hope that someone does write to me and has a really interesting story, or some past experience, and White Noise is sort of around those themes of redemption and second chances, and rehabilitation, and really highlighting the important work that sort of so many within the correctional system do in that such a challenging space, trying to rehabilitate these inmates, and so I also would really love to hear from people that have rehabilitated themselves, or have had a history of criminal activity in their past, but they've someone's given them a second chance and allowed themselves to redeem themselves and become a productive member of society, and breaking that cycle of crime.
No, that would be interesting to get that sort of feedback from someone who'd been in that situation. And Nicole wonders, though, if you have had many readers writing to you.
I have had quite a few, mostly on Instagram. I'm most active on Instagram, so I get quite a few DMs on there of people telling me that they really enjoyed it, and there's a lot of people asking if there will be a sequel, and if if Laura's coming back. And I think I left the end of it quite open-ended, that there could be a sequel. So
a
lot of people picked up on that and sort of were hoping that,
Yeah.
that there would be a sequel. So yeah, I'm thankful that I get to tell people that there will be a second one.
Yeah, no, that's great. And are you signed for a certain number of books or just the next book?
Just two at this point in time.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
just White Noise and
And the
this next one, which
yeah.
apparently it doesn't have a title. So
Oh well.
due out next year at some point. I don't have a date for that one yet.
Hopefully there's many more to come.
Hopefully, I would love that. I've got lots and lots of ideas.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Yeah,
lots and lots of stories.
I'm sure in your line of work as well, you would have lots of ideas along those lines.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And what do you hope readers will love about your book?
I want them to love Laura, who's a flawed character. She's done some things in her past that she's not proud of. She carries a lot of guilt and a lot of shame for these things that have happened in her past. But at her heart, she's a good person, and she's just trying to do her best in all aspects of her life, and trying to help other people and trying to help the community. And I think I want readers to come away with sort of a different sense of the criminal justice system as well. Yes, prisons are incredibly challenging, incredibly dangerous, and there is, all those things that you see in books and movies. There is the riots, there is the attacks, there is the standovers. There is all of that stuff, but there's a lot of hope as well, and there's a lot of good people in there that are working really, really hard, sort of behind those prison walls that you don't really get a whole lot of insight into. Every day going in there trying to rehabilitate, break that cycle of crime. And I guess I'd love readers to sort of, I guess a lot of the time inmates are, they've done this terrible crime and they're locked away, and you're sort of held away from society, and people don't want to think about them, which is fair enough. But the vast majority of inmates will be released again. They will come back into the community, and it's it's the job of corrections to stop this cycle of crime, and to try and have these people leave prison as better people than when they entered.
Yeah. I wonder if it's a book that will be put into libraries in the prison.
Maybe. I haven't asked that.
That would be interesting as well, if there were current inmates reading it as well.
Yeah.
And when you're writing emotionally draining scenes, is there anything you need to do to get in the right mood?
I'm quite an emotional person as it is. So I won't go into any spoilers, but there is a scene in White Noise that I was pretty much sobbing as I wrote.
Yeah.
And I think I'm just the type of person that my emotions are always there, just under the surface. So basically all I have to do is start writing, and I'll start tearing up, and then I'll be, the emotions will just keep pouring out. And but also whenever I'm writing the, sort of the final scenes of a book, and I know that, I'm wrapping it up, and this is the last, times I'm going to be spending with these characters for a little while, like I'll always end up getting teary as I'm writing the end. And as I always in my drafts I always write the end at the end as well, so I'm always writing that with tears in my eyes. I'm just an emotional person, so
at least though you know that you can bring them back in the next book.
Exactly.
They're not gone forever.
Yes.
And is there any advice you'd like to give a new writer?
Yes, I've got a few bits of advice. I always say that I think it's important to treat writing as a job, because if you set up a really good routine for yourself, and you sort of get into that mindset that even though you may be sitting down, you're not inspired, you're not feeling creative, the last thing you feel like doing is, is sitting down and trying to wrestle with these plot points or these characters or this dialogue or whatever. I think if you sort of get into this routine and this mindset that it is a job and that you do need to get these words down, you do need to progress this first draft and get it done. If you do get that book deal, and your publisher will expect you to write a full-length manuscript to a deadline, and you can't just sit down and write when you feel like it. You need to have that routine in place, and it is so much easier if you've got yourself into that mindset and that routine, and just writing whenever you don't feel like it, but you just need to get it done. Yeah. I also think writers groups are really important. For me, I guess for all writers, I guess writing can be quite a lonely thing. It's just you sitting in a room with your laptop or your computer, trying to get these words down every day. And so it really does make a huge difference, I think, if you've got a group of writing buddies that are going through the same thing as you. You can support each other, you can encourage each other. When you get those rejections, they understand and they can commiserate with you. And then, if you do one day get that book deal, you can celebrate, they can support you, they can get your name out there, they can recommend you to people. And I think it's a really important level of support to have in such a solitary activity.
And I'm like before at the beginning, I said that it was a 5-star read for me. I'm interested to know, has the sales been good for it?
Yeah. I think sales have been good. Yeah.
No, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
And what have you found so far to be your most favourite part of the publishing journey?
For me, it was always seeing my book in an airport. That was, I don't know why, but for me, I think it's the same for a lot of people. But for me, I love to travel, and that was just always the peak moment for me. Like, I love going into bookstores and seeing it there, and that's incredible. But seeing it, in an airport, it's an exciting place. I think when you're already excited to be going somewhere, and then seeing it there, just that was really probably the pinnacle for me.
Well, thanks so much for chatting with me. It's been great talking to you. Do you want to let people know how they can keep in touch with you?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm most active on Instagram. So I'm Mercedes Mercer Writes on Instagram. I've got a Facebook, Mercedes Mercer, a website, mercedesmercer.com. So basically search Mercedes Mercer on anything, and you'll find me.
Well, thanks so much, and really looking forward to seeing your next book when it's out.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thanks to everyone who joined in and asked some questions.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye.